Okay. All right, everybody. Welcome to our incredible Cacio e Pepe handmade pasta experience. So, congratulations for making the right decision.
Oh, yeah.
And wanting to learn how to cook this class. My name is Tyler, one of the founders here at Truffle Shuffle, and I will be your chef cooking today through this incredible class. So, what I want you to do is go ahead and we're going to start with the basics, okay? Whenever we make a recipe, we always start with our mise en place and our ingredients, all right? So whether you're cooking along with an ingredient kit from Truffle Shuffle, whether you're cooking along and you've got the ingredients on your own, this is a really, really important kind of mindset and ethos of cooking and being able to do so efficiently, smoothly, stress-free, all the other things that rhyme with that. So I'm going to walk you through first things first, our mise en place, then we'll get to cooking. Okay, so first thing on our mise en place. All right, over here on my stove, I have a large pot. All right, I've filled it up with water till it's an inch from the top. Get that on the stove. All right, we can pop that on low heat to start, just to get it nice and warm. Okay, very importantly, we're not adding salt yet. Right, whenever we cook pasta or anything for that matter, we season the water right before we add the product. That's super important because it's very, very easy, and I can't even tell you how many times I've watched chefs over-season the water because they put salt at the beginning, evaporation happens, next thing you know, the water is too salty. Okay, so don't do that. We'll also have a nice large saute pan. I'm using stainless steel. You could use non-stick. Okay, a couple other elements over here. All right, we have a beautiful cutting board, rolling pin, tongs, microplane, or you can use a cheese grater. All right, we got a 1 and 1.5 cup measure, a little knife. If you have one of these and you've always wanted to use it, you can totally use it, okay? Called a bench scraper. We can use it to scrape the bench. All right. We'll also need a little strainer over here too. Boom. So, that's our mise en place that we're going to need for this class, so go ahead, get that organized, okay? Next up, we have our ingredients, okay? So if you're cooking from the Truffle Shuffle kit, you got something similar to this. We got some 00 flour, 1.5 cups, a little pecorino cheese, which is a beautiful sheep smoked cheese, right? Nice and sharp and powerfully flavored. Balinese Truffle Salt, black pepper, a little Truffle Carpaccio, finest in the universe, butter, and then over here I have my egg yolk, and olive oil conveniently separated and combined. That's 4 egg yolks, 1 whole egg, 1 teaspoon olive oil. If you are cooking on your own, I want you to take a moment, pause this recording, separate the egg yolks, right? Pop them in a little bowl with that egg and that teaspoon of olive oil and just mix them together with a fork. Okay, it's going to make your life a million times easier. So, that's our mise en place and ingredients, okay? If you are ready to get cooking out here, all right? Let's get at it. Okay. So, the first thing I want to do is I want to actually make my pasta dough. All right? Whenever you make pasta, we're going to show you how to do it by hand. You could do this with a machine if you wanted to. I think it's really important to learn how to do it by hand because once you understand the nuances of the feel of the product, then when you add a machine to it, you understand what that machine's doing. Okay, it demystifies it. So with that being said, I'm going to work directly on my countertop. Okay, I've got a wooden countertop over here. It doesn't matter if your countertop is wood or marble, right, or anything like that. We're going to work directly on the countertop. I don't like to work on a cutting board because the cutting board can slide around. If you do have a nice large pasta board, you can use that. But make sure it's nice and large, okay? So, I've got my flour and my egg yolk, and olive oil. All right? And so, what I want to do is I want to start by organizing first what we call bench flour. Okay, so I'm going to take 1/2 cup of flour, right? 1 even half cup. I'm going to set it off to the side. All right, again, whether you're working out of the pre-portioned ingredient kit or you did the shopping on your own, 1/2 cup of flour off to the side. It's very important when we make pasta to have bench flour. Okay, that's the flour we're going to dust our hands, our work surface, add flour to our dough as it needs it, because it will, right? So set that off to the side. The rest of the flour, I want you to put directly in the center of your work surface. All right. Saving that little Ziploc bag if you got the ingredient kit. We're going to use that to rest the dough. And then what I want to do is bring my hand together in my crane style approach, okay? And I want to just go ahead and just form a nice little well in the center of that flour, okay? It's really important that this well is big enough, okay? The biggest mistake I see people make when they make pasta is they make their well too small. Then the eggs are too deep, and then the eggs can break out through the sides, okay? So go ahead, transfer your egg mixture into the center of that flour. All right, this is a very egg yolk heavy dough over here, right? That's going to give us a really nice, shiny, smooth pasta, very luxurious. The olive oil also helps give us a little shininess. Okay, so I'm going to take my fork, place it right where my flour meets my eggs. All right, and I'm literally just going to stir with my fork. I'm just going to stir the flour into the eggs. All right. The goal over here is nothing magical. Okay, we're literally just trying to incorporate the flour into our eggs. All right. And get enough flour in there until there's no longer a risk of our eggs running onto our floor, right? And so this is the first step of the 4-step pasta making process. This is the stirring stage. Okay, so first we stir, then we chop, then we fold, and then we knead. Okay, so those are the 4 stages in our pasta making process. So as you can see, I have enough flour mixed into my eggs. They're no longer risking running on the floor. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and now enter the stage 2, which is the chopping stage. All right, and you can do this with a bench scraper or a knife, okay, either or. But literally, we're just going to grab the flour, chop it into our eggs. All right. And what we're doing is we're exposing more surface area, right, of the eggs and the flour, and allowing it to incorporate a lot easier. Okay. This step just speeds up the process. You don't necessarily have to do this. You can just keep stirring, but what happens is it starts to get a lot more difficult to bring it all together. So I always like to enter this little chopping stage to make that a little bit faster. Okay, so what you'll wind up with after the chopping stage is something that looks absolutely nothing like pasta dough. Okay, that's exactly what you want. You want your mixture to look like a crumbly kind of wet mass. That's perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to start folding. All we're trying to do over here is create a sticky dough. Okay, so I'm going to grab a little bench flour, sprinkle it on my hands, sprinkle it on my bench scraper or knife. I'm just going to fold the dough together. Okay? Boom. Alright, so just keep folding and folding. Alright? All the way until it becomes a cohesive dough that you can kind of pick up at once. Okay, that's what we're shooting for. It's going to be pretty sticky. That's what we want. We always want to add less flour at the beginning. That way we can add a little bit more flour as we go. Because every egg is slightly different size. Our humidity levels in our kitchens are very, very different, right? So, now we enter our kneading stage. Alright, so this is where I sprinkle a little bit of bench flour, a little bit on my hands. Alright, I like to get bench flour on both sides of my pasta. And I'm just going to fold and roll. Okay, and I'm going to do that a couple times. Right, as I'm doing this, adding just a sprinkle of bench flour as my dough starts to stick, right? And the goal here is we want to add just enough flour to the point where it's no longer sticking. The dough is no longer sticking to our hands, but not too much flour to where it no longer is pliable, okay? So you can always add more flour. It's much more difficult to take flour away. So what I'm shooting for is a point like this, right? Where my dough is together, I squeeze it, it's no longer sticking to my hands. You might have some dough on your hands, but I'll show you what to do with that in a second. So you can see over here, it's basically like silly putty. Okay, that's what we're shooting for. Alright. And so once we got our silly putty dough, just set it off to the side real quick, right? Rub your hands together, get the excess dough off of your hands. Alright? And just think of making pasta dough, it's like edible Play-Doh, right? Super, super easy to work with. So, I got my excess dough off of my hands. I'm going to go ahead with my bench scraper. And just scrape. Alright, clean it off. And now we're going to start kneading the dough to get it nice and smooth. Okay? So I'm literally just going to fold and roll. Okay? And so the goal over here is not to add any more flour. Okay? I know a lot of times we see videos of chefs, they're making pasta, they're throwing flour all over the place, right? In the perfect world, perfectly hydrated dough, right, is not sticking to our hands. It's not sticking to the work surface. And we don't have any excess flour on our work surface. Okay? So as I'm doing this, what I'm doing is I'm folding the dough, right? And then with the palm of my hand, I'm rolling the dough forward. Okay? Then I bring it back, give it a quarter turn, fold it, and roll it. Okay? So just like that. Super, super simple. And this process of rolling like this, right, is forming our gluten. Okay? You can make this recipe using gluten-free flour, like a version that is 1-to-1, right? You don't have to knead the dough this much if you're making gluten-free flour, just because you'd be kneading it for no reason, right? But if we're using wheat flour, we got to knead this dough to really get that nice texture. Okay? And with this dough, we're going to knead it for about, 3 to 5 minutes or so. Just until it gets that really nice kind of silkiness to it. Okay, so you see my dough is starting to get there. Right? And even if it has slight little pock marks in it, that's perfectly fine. Okay? That's perfectly fine over there. But I'm going to go ahead and just continue kneading up this dough. Alright, just for a few more minutes, just until it comes together. Alright, beautiful. I can already feel it starting to get really nice and shiny. The other thing when you're kneading is from time to time, literally just give it a break for a couple seconds, right? And then come back to it. Right, you'll really feel a difference even if you just take that tiny little break, right? Oh. All right, so my dough is feeling absolutely gorgeous, right? I can show you how mine's looking. Nice and smooth. All right, I'm gonna form it into a little ball. Right, nice and smooth. It's always going to have that little pasta belly button on the bottom, but the top is feeling nice and smooth. So now I'm going to let the dough rest, okay? So to do this, I want to sprinkle a little flour on the outside of my dough. All right. And then I want to go ahead and just transfer my dough into a little Ziploc bag or plastic wrap and set it off to the side to rest. Okay. It's super important that you cover your dough, right? If you don't cover it, it's going to dry out on the outside and give you little dry pieces of flecks of dough throughout your dough when you go to roll it out later. So make sure it's covered. And when it comes to resting, right, you'll see a lot of information out there on how much time you need it to rest. So ideally, we let this dough rest for about 2 hours or so. You can do like a speed rest, right? Like 30 minutes or so, like we're going to do right now. And you can rest the dough up to, about 12 hours or so. Okay, I don't ever suggest resting it over 12 hours because you can start getting oxidized dough, which isn't a bad thing. It just has little pock marks of brown, right? So make sure you let the dough rest. When we let the dough rest, that gluten that we formed that's super tight right now is going to relax a little bit. It makes our rolling process much, much easier. Okay, so that's really all it gives us. It allows us to roll the dough out into a very even shape, right? And it allows us to, the dough to rest and for us to get that really nice thinness as quickly as possible. Okay, so what I'm going to do over here is take a quick break, all right? I'm going to break for 30 minutes. You can break for a couple hours if you want to, all right? You can break for 15 minutes if you want to, but I'm going to go ahead and get my kitchen really nice and clean. When we come back from this break, I'll see you there in just a moment. All right, so our dough is rested, right? It's allowed to relax a little bit, hang out. I'm going to knock out a couple knife work projects, and then we're going to get to rolling out this dough. Okay, so first things first, I want to go ahead and get my butter and a little bit of my Truffle Carpaccio prepped up. All right, so what I want to do is I want to dice my butter into little cubes. Okay, this isn't 100% necessary, but I just like to do this because it allows us to emulsify the butter a whole lot better. Okay, so you can go little cubes, okay? Or you can literally just cut little pads of butter. All right? Either or. But later on, when we go to add our butter to our sauce, if we have it cut up, it's going to melt down and emulsify and create a beautiful creamy sauce a whole lot better than if we just leave it as a whole stick. Okay? So, go ahead. Transfer that butter into a little bowl or a little plate. This is what we call mise en place, right? Some people call it prep. This is getting everything in place, okay? All the ingredients, we have to mise en place, right? And then when we go to cook, we're just adding ingredients that are already prepped, ready to go in little bowls in the cooking process. It makes our life 100 times easier. Okay, so dice that little butter, set it off to the side. Okay, I'm also going to chop half of this Truffle Carpaccio over here, all right?
Oh, yeah.
So what I want you to do is grab a little fork or a little spoon. All right, we're going to remove half of this carpaccio from the jar. The other half we're going to leave as slices in the jar that we're going to garnish our finished dish with. All right. Well, and I'm just draining off as much oil as I can, just because chopping through oil is not our favorite thing to do in the entire world. Okay. So what I want you to do is a technique that we call haché, which is one hand on the spine, which is the non-sharp side of my blade, one hand on my handle. We're just going to rock the knife up and down. Okay. So I like to work from bottom to top, and then from top to bottom. All right, do that one more time. And then literally just turn my knife 90 degrees and go side to side. All right, and as we do this, we basically want each piece of our truffle to be smaller than grains of sushi rice. Okay, that's kind of the goal over here. This is going to make sure that every single bite of our pasta has a little bit of that truffle component in it. All right. And then we're going to garnish the dish with the slices of carpaccio, and that gets our Ben & Jerry's effect, right? Where like every second or third bite has that crunch, that nice large chunk of truffle in there, and tastes delicious. Okay. So, come over here, transfer the chopped truffle into a little bowl or a little plate, just like we did with our butter. All right, we're going to set that off to the side. Okay. So, at this point, pasta dough is made, truffle is chopped, and our butter is diced. Okay, so we're ready to get to rolling out this pasta. All right, and we're gonna go back to working directly on our countertop. Okay, so I want to come over here again, get rid of anything that might be getting in my way. All right, so I just want my dough, which at this point has relaxed, right? It's a lot easier, softer to the touch, okay? And that little bit of resting is going to make it a lot easier to roll, okay? So in this class, we're going to show you how to roll this pasta by hand. If you want to use a pasta machine, you can totally do that. We want to roll the pasta thin enough where we can actually read or see the letters of a piece of paper through the dough. We don't necessarily have to read the entire piece of paper through the dough, but you want to be able to see the letters through the dough. That's called the paper test, okay? So I'm going to start over here by dusting my work surface with a little bit of flour, okay? A little bit on bottom, a little bit on the top, a little bit on my hands, okay? We're going to grab our rolling pin, get a little bit of flour on there too, all right? And when we roll our dough, we want to start in a very specific way, and this allows us to get the most even shaped sheet of pasta possible, okay? If you start rolling the pasta in a bunch of different directions, I promise you, you're going to wind up with something that looks like Antarctica, right? Our goal is to make a really nice, long, almost like oval-shaped piece of dough, because that makes our portioning much, much easier, okay? So what I want to do is come over here, just roll up and down, all right? Give a quarter turn, all right? Roll up and down again, all right? Then give it a quarter turn and roll it up and down again. Another quarter turn and roll, okay? And we're just going to continue this process until we have a really nice, large, kind of squarish, circular shaped object, okay? From time to time, I do want you to flip over your dough. Okay, from time to time, flip it over. And really make sure we're going all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom. Okay? So, as we're doing this, from time to time, we got to make sure to get a little more flour on our dough. Alright? And again, we really want to make sure we're rolling all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom. Okay? One thing I like to call out, if you are working on a marble countertop or something that is very, very smooth, you're going to have to be really diligent about making sure there's enough flour and your dough isn't sticking. Okay, so I'll kind of remind us a couple times throughout this, but especially when it gets thinner, it's very easy for dough being rolled on marble or smooth countertops to stick, right? So we got to be really, really diligent about that. Okay. So over here, again, I'm rolling the dough, right? Boom. And again, you see I'm getting this thing that kind of looks like a large, almost square, circle-looking thing with rounded edges. And as I'm doing this, it's important to make sure you're putting some elbow grease in here. Okay, right? You got to lean in. This is how... it's like the kitchen workout routine, right? So I want to keep rolling this until my dough is about 12 to 18 inches wide, okay? So once we're there, now we're just going to go in one direction. Now we're just going to go up and down, okay? So I want to start rolling up and down, okay? And then stop. All right. Now we're going to start a technique that's going to make our rolling take half as long. Okay, we're going to put the pin in the center, roll to the top, all right, then lift it up, put it back in the center, and roll down. All right, lift it back up, in the center, roll up, back in the center, and roll down. And so this little technique over here is literally going to make your pasta rolling take half as long, as opposed to rolling all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom, and we're constantly fighting ourselves, right? So with that, again, get a nice sheet of flour on here. All right, flour is our friend. You can kind of hit the edges from time to time. Again, we're shooting for this to be a large kind of sheet, right? So I'm getting relatively close over here. And the reason why I know is because I can start to see the countertop through my dough. All right? That lets us know that we're starting to get there. Okay? So, again, just keep an eye on it. As you start to see that countertop, you know you're getting relatively close. But again, we want to roll this thin enough where we can actually read a piece of paper through it, right? So, again, make sure to give a little flip. To our marble countertop friends, make sure, right, public service announcement, make sure your dough isn't sticking, right? Because if you haven't flipped it at this point, I guarantee you it is sticking. So, again, we're just keep rolling this dough out, working from the middle to the outside, pressing down, right? Showing that dough who's boss. And I can see my dough is really, really close, right? I'm really starting to get there, okay? And you see we got this nice large sheet of dough. So, get a little more flour. All right, give it a flip, a little bit more. Notice I'm rubbing the flour into the dough. I like doing that because it helps make sure that we don't have any like large chunks of flour on our finished products, right? Just something that you'll see sometimes when people are not scrupulous about how the flour is put on their dough. All right, so my dough is there. All right, and the way I know it's there is because it passes our paper test. All right, which you can see right here. You can start to see the piece of paper through my dough, okay? So this is looking spot on over here. I'm just gonna roll it just a little bit more. All right, boom. Just a couple more times. Nice, and then my dough is ready for portioning. All right. So, at this stage, once you get your dough to the point where it's ready to pass the paper test, I want you to turn up that pot of water that's on the stove. Okay, now we're gonna go nice high heat over here. All right, we're gonna bring this up to a boil. All right, and basically all that's left is we're gonna portion our dough into our strands of pasta, make a simple pasta sauce, and then we'll get to eating. Okay, so with our dough, it's nice and thin. All right, before I start portioning, I want to get generous amount of flour on the outside. Okay, so again, top side, give it a little flip. And we got the bottom side over here too. All right. And so to portion, very simply, I'm just going to fold this into thirds. Okay, just like that. And so we're going to cut what we call tagliatelle, which is a very, very simple shape of pasta. It's a 1/4 inch thick. Okay, so I'm going to come over here, curl my fingers in, and just cut my little 1/4 inch thick slices of pasta. All right. And I want to start by cutting about 10 or so, and then take a look. All right. I want to make sure that my pasta is not sticking to itself at this point. Okay, if your pasta is sticking to itself, all you got to do is just unfold that pasta, get a little more flour inside, fold it back up, and then continue portioning. All right. So I'm going to come over here, cut the rest of my pasta. And what I like to do is from time to time, right, I like to actually go ahead and kind of fluff up my pasta a little bit, okay? So I like to fluff it up, add a little sprinkle of flour in here. That fluff helps make sure that our individual noodles, right, individual pieces of pasta are not going to stick to each other, okay? And a couple troubleshooting techniques, right? One, you really got to make sure your dough is thin enough, okay? If it's too thick, it's not going to be nice and delicate, okay? You always would rather have your pasta be a little bit on the thinner side than on the thicker side. Okay, so that's kind of troubleshooting tip number one. The second one, again, is as you're doing this, if you notice that you got to kind of unfold every strand of pasta, right? I'd rather have you just kind of add more flour to the inside of the sheet than unfold every single strand. Okay. So, come over here. Cutting our little pieces of pasta. Alright. Sprinkle them with flour and just kind of giving them a little fluff over here. Alright, again, I like getting a nice amount of flour in there from the bench flour that we have saved. And this really helps make sure that every single strand of pasta is really nicely floured. Okay. So, once we have our pasta nicely portioned, alright, I'm just going to transfer my pasta onto a little plate. Alright, I'm going to clean up my work surface over here. Right? Get it nice and clean. When I come back, my pasta water is going to be boiling, okay? Our pasta is cut. We'll make a very simple pasta sauce, and then we'll get to eating. Okay, so I'll see you here in just a couple minutes. All right, we're back over here. So I got my station nice and cleaned up, okay? My water is also boiling at this point. All right, so we are ready to make some beautiful finished pasta. Okay, so I'm gonna start by seasoning my pasta water. Again, we always season right before we add the product. So I'm gonna add in my kosher salt over here. All right, and we want the water to taste seasoned. A lot of times people say, hey, how do I know if the water is seasoned enough or not? You honestly taste it, right? So give it a quick taste, right? It should taste seasoned, okay? Mine needs a pinch more. So I'm gonna come over here, I'm gonna add my pasta into my water. All right, give it a stir. We're gonna cook this pasta for 2 minutes, okay? So we're gonna go 2 minutes over here. All right. And that's gonna cook our pasta to a beautiful al dente. Okay? And very importantly, we're going to finish cooking the pasta in the sauce. Okay? And this is a step that, at least in the US, we don't see a lot, but is very, very important to take noodles and sauce and make them a pasta dish. Okay? If we don't cook the pasta in the sauce, what happens is we have the pasta and the sauce doesn't stick to the pasta, just sinks to the bottom, right? We've all had that bowl of spaghetti before where all the sauce is at the bottom of the bowl, right? Really well cooked pasta, every strand of pasta should be coated in sauce, and there shouldn't be a whole ton of it at the bottom of the bowl or plate. Okay, so that's what we're shooting for over here. So we're gonna cook 2 minutes, okay, in our pasta pot. But we're going to use a little bit of that pasta water to make our sauce. Okay, so what I want you to do is as that pasta is cooking, okay, we're going to start making our pasta sauce. So I'm going to remove 1 cup of water from this pasta. Okay, we don't necessarily need to bring that noodle with us. So 1 cup of pasta water into our large saute pan. I'm going to take another ½ cup of pasta water just to have on hand, right, later on. It's always helpful to have a little extra pasta water as we do this. So, as this is finishing cooking, large saute pan, we're going medium-high heat over here. We're going to add all of our butter, all of that chopped truffle carpaccio, and a pinch of our Balinese truffle salt over here. Okay, 1 pinch. We're not going to add too much. We can always add more. Okay, my timer's going off. I'm just adding 1 pinch. So, let this cook over medium-high heat over here. Alright, I'm going to drain my pasta and then bring it right back over and we'll start to finish our sauce. Okay, so I'm going to drain this pasta real quick. Again, make sure that's on medium-high heat. So, you can see over here, I got my drained pasta, right? I got my sauce. Again, I'm on medium-high heat over here. And I want to cook this sauce down with a little bit of that black pepper. Alright, you can use fresh ground black pepper or pre-ground, right? Get a little pinch of pepper in there too. Alright, and now we're going to add our pasta into our sauce. Okay, so pop it in there. And we're going to cook this pasta down in our sauce. Okay, and what's going to happen is, again, the sauce and the pasta are going to become one. Okay, they're going to come together. So, I want to stir it up a little bit. Alright. Give it a nice stir. Almost similar to how risotto, the more we stir it, the creamier it gets. It's kind of similar with pasta. We're stirring that starch out a little bit. The starch is emulsifying in with our sauce. It's going to thicken up. Okay? So from time to time, you give it a little toss. Alright? And we just need to do this for about a minute or so, just to allow the pasta and the sauce to cook together and to start to stick to each other. Okay? So, you'll get to a point where you don't really have a ton of sauce left in the bottom of your pan, like you can see over here. I can move my pasta back and forth. I can see the bottom of my pan. So I'm going to turn the heat off. And now I'm going to grate in half of my pecorino cheese. Alright, the other half I'm going to save and put on top of my finished pasta. Alright, but I always like to get about half of the cheese into our pasta itself. And the cheese is almost like our culinary glue, right? It thickens it up. Allows the sauce to get nice and thick and beautiful. All right. So get that cheese in there. Stir it around. Let that cheese melt down. Okay. And again, you'll see it'll thicken our sauce up. All right. Boom. Look at that. So your pasta should look like this, right? Glazed, beautiful strands of pasta. So I'm going to get a quick taste test and then adjust my seasoning. All right. My pasta's tasting delicious. A little sprinkle of salt. All right. And I'm ready to plate this up. So, in order to plate this up, you want to grab a little bowl. All right. We got our remaining cheese. Our remaining little bit of truffle salt we'll need to add as finishing salt. Our carpaccio and my ground black pepper. All right. We're going to plate this up. So, if your pasta looks dry, right, if there's not a ton of sauce in there, you can add just a little bit more of this excess pasta water. Okay, that's what it's for. We always have a little extra pasta water at the end to add to our pasta. Okay, so what I want to do is go nice stacks. Okay, so start with a little bit wider of a stack, right, and slowly stack on top of that to really build some height to our pasta. So you can see over here. Alright, this is how you get that beautiful height. Alright, you just keep stacking and stacking and stacking. Okay. And again, as you see, our pasta is coated in sauce. Alright. So, for our finishing moves, okay, we're just going to put a couple slices of this carpaccio over here. And again, this is going to be kind of our like Ben and Jerry's moment, right? Every second or third bite. Get a little drizzle of that oil as well. All right. And we're going to add a little bit of black pepper over the top for Cacio e Pepe, right? Cheese and pepper. One final sprinkle of our little truffle salt. And then a nice grating of that pecorino cheese all over the top. Okay. And so, when done correctly, all right, any well-made fresh pasta should have what we call the jiggle, okay? Because we have all that beautiful sauce in there. So you can see over here, I got my little jiggle going on. Oh, man. Looks absolutely stunning. Boom. So, as you finish up these dishes, okay, we want to make sure to see them. So, snap a picture, right? Tag us on social media. We got it right there, at Truffle Shuffle _SF. We will always repost, like, share, comment, all the above. But I want to thank you very much for joining me in this Cacio e Pepe experience. I really hope you enjoy this dish over here. I hope you learned something, right? That way you can take this pasta technique and apply it to a plethora of different sauces, right? Pasta shapes and flavors. So, thank you very much for letting me join you. Hope to cook with you again soon, and have a great night. Bye, everyone.